In this lecture, we're going to be explaining the R in REBT, being rational. For us to explain and understand rational emotive behavior therapy more, we need to understand the first component of this model, which is being rational. We're going to talk about 6 different ideas: logic, reason, functionality, illogic, non-reasonable, and flexible. Of course, there is a difference between rationality and logic, but for us to explain rationality, there is a high correlation between logic and rationality, and for us to be rational, we oftentimes also need to be logical. There are times where the two are opposed, but we're talking about a general perspective, because logic is one of the main aspects of rational emotive behavior therapy. When you're questioning your rationality, start off by questioning your logic, because if your logic is fundamentally wrong, the problem might arise there. And as we said, logic and reason are correlated yet different, and both of them apply to REBT. Now, when we talk about functionality, the interpretation should be based on the functionality option. So this correlation between logic and reason, how is it manifesting and how can we interpret it from a functional standpoint? How is it developing and how is it influencing our thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors? But we also need to be aware of what's illogical. Not just do we need to identify logical reasoning, but we also need to identify illogical reasoning, and by default replace it with logical thinking. We also need to be aware of non-reason. When something is non-reasonable, same thing applies for reason. Our interpretation should distinguish between reasonable and non-reasonable. Not only do we need to focus on what is reasonable and what is rational, but also we need to distinguish between what's reasonable and what's not reasonable, and eliminate those that are not reasonable. And lastly, when we talk about rational thinking, we need to be talking about flexibility. We're going to talk throughout this course about belief and conditioning, and our rational thinking and our reason and our rationality can be affected by our belief systems and our conditioning, which we need to work on and we are going to work on in further lectures.